to the stage Duncan Wood from Ingenuity Group, Danny Micklethwaite from Arla Foods, Lindsay Clay from Thinkbox, Paul Cooper from Essence Media, and Jessica Scott from Notorious Communications, and Jason Spencer from ITV.
Have I got in the wrong suit?
I
Don't
think you'll be fine. All okay?
Are we all right to sit there?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
good?
There's no rules, is there?
No. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this talk. This is I guess, quite a sensitive subject, which everyone here probably feels very strongly about, and we're going to get through a couple of different opinions. But I think when you talk about spend, it's good to start with some numbers. And I think the first question I'd like to ask to the panel is, is this actually a reality? Jason?
We're looking at our data, and I appreciate we work at TV, so TV as a barometer of this. We've seen about 10 years of stability, where the money coming in and out of the regions has stayed flat. The last 2 years, we've seen about £250 million. That's about 30% of the total move from regional agencies to London agencies. And I know that's just TV, but I think TV as a barometer, from a brand building perspective, I think that's a worrying trend. So I think understanding why that's happening, what we can do about it, is key.
Is that a few brands? Many brands?
It's a number of brands. There are some spending more than others. This is moving from regional media agencies to London regional agencies. Yeah. And there's quite a bit to unpick in that. But this is the last 2 years alone. And what we need to do is understand why it's happening, how we can change that narrative.
Paul, your thoughts on that?
I disagree. I know there's some numbers there, and I'm not disputing your numbers. I think sometimes as well numbers are double counted and things like that around someone moving from here to here and spending more and spending less. I think on the whole so many people are spending less across the board. Budgets aren't the same as they were 2 years ago, particularly in direct-to-consumer brands and things, and brands that are kind of VC and private equity backed, because money's quite expensive at the minute to borrow. But if I can use us as a barometer, and I know as an agency this year across every metric we will be bigger than we were last year across every metric. And I know money is shifting, and I know and I know we're just talking about TV, but I think you come to this kind of festival over 2 days and you see the industry that's thriving. If you listen to Andy Burnham yesterday, he talked about the GM economy that is growing significantly over the past kind of 5 or 10 years. I like the stat that for Essence Mediacom North and for WPP, we've got close to 600 people in a building just over there that we built ourselves. That was a really big kind of investment in what we thought the future was going to be in this city and in the region, and for us as a business, for WPP as a business, and for Essence Mediacom, it's the third biggest operation in Europe for the largest media agency in Europe. So I think the industry is thriving. Accounts will move north and south. There is one thing that I do agree with Jason and the rest of the panel on, that I think more accounts are moving through intermediaries, and I think intermediaries are very, very London-centric. And I don't think most intermediaries, with the exception of yourselves that are making an effort.
That must suck up.
Well, Ingenuity have always, to be fair, you've had lead generation business across the whole of the UK. You've always had a UK footprint. But I think on the whole, most intermediaries are very, very London-centric and just don't understand the industry in the north. And I think when you're doing that and you're saying to a client, I can put the right 5 agencies in front of you and they can all do the same thing, I'll recite a conversation I had with one in the last 6 months who said, I'm not putting you on your pitch list, Paul, because all the talent sits in London. My response was, I can't repeat on a stage.
Sure.
I think he said that's aggressive. I said I think it's passionate.
But I think you're totally right, Paul, in terms of things aren't as linear as looking at TV spend and sort of on what's shifted here and there. There is a problem. There's a lot of talent that's been lost out of Manchester because of these shifts in business and because of this shift of change, because of this groundswell into a small part of the UK that is now representing 90% of the spend that comes out of advertising and media. I'm glad that this year has been successful, but I think as a macro view, we can't ignore the trend that is happening. Intermediaries are part of that. We're part of that too. I think we've got to lean in and stop sort of pretending everything's okay, because very, very quickly, this idea that this comes back, this cyclical behaviour of some's lost, some's won, some's lost, it's not the same anymore. I think we've got to do something about it. We have to start being a force for change and not just trying to ignore the facts.
I totally agree. I've spent the last 2 or 3 months speaking to a number of intermediaries and clients who've moved their business, and I think there's two or three key things that come from that. There's some old school thinking, because a lot of this business, to your point, has been intermediary led. Old school thinking, a bit of unconscious bias, but I think it works both ways. I think it's an assumption that outside of London is not as good, which is wrong, and there's an assumption that intermediaries don't want to engage with agents outside London, which I think can be addressed. I think there's a bit of out of sight, out of mind, which I think we can also address really easily. But I do think that there's been a disinvestment amongst network agencies from supporting the outside of London hubs that they have. Potentially with the exception, of Essence
I think an
Mediacom.
84,000 square foot building might not be the case in that front.
No, but I think there's some elements within that which we're not going to be able to unpick in a very micro level today. But that disinvestment, that element has not helped, and I think there's an opportunity for independents and for networks to address that really easily.
I think a key point here is the difference between our clients leaving northern agencies in favour of southern agencies, or is it more an inclusion or a consideration play? Are northern agencies even getting a look in the first place? Question for you, Danny, is from a northern agency point of view, are agencies in the north prospecting you? Are they making themselves aware to you?
Yeah, I think if I talk about kind of our sort of agency setup that we have some very great agencies in the north. So we've got Zeal based here in Manchester, we've got FBP based in Newcastle, we've got City Press based here in Manchester. So, quite a lot of our spend goes through those guys, particularly in the shopper arena as well. We've also built a lot of our own internal capabilities as well. So we've also built our own internal agency. We've employed a lot of people into there as well. So I'd probably say for us, the net flow has probably been a little bit more to the north. But if I'm being really honest, I don't have a target of north versus south agencies. I don't look at it that way. I think the most important thing for me is which agency is going to deliver what I need, which agency is going to help me really build that, whether they happen to be based in London or Newcastle or wherever. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I think what's most important, though, for me, if I was going to say for northern agencies or northern-based agencies, whatever you want to say, I wouldn't think about location being the most important thing. I'd say if you build capabilities, very much what you were saying, if you build that great skill knowledge, if you get the right people in place, etc., then the business will flow from that. I don't think you should be too blindsided or have a chip on your shoulder a little bit about being a northern-based agency. Because for me, when we look at new agencies or we pitch or who we work with, the only thing that really matters is, are these guys help us going to grow? Are they going to have the capabilities to make it better for us? And that's the key thing that really matters. And whether they happen to be 2 hours away in London or an hour away in Manchester on a train, that doesn't massively come into our consideration set as well. So I guess if I was going to recommend anything, or my view would be, focus on building the best possible business you can and the capabilities you can. Think about business that you want to win beyond the north as well, and also think about business you want to win in the south or Newcastle or wherever it will be. That is the most important thing, I would say, rather than a north-south divide.
Yeah.
But there have been instances that I've heard where brands who have traditionally or more recently had northern-based agencies have been told by intermediaries, you've outgrown your market, you have to go somewhere else. So I think for as much as you're totally right, you've got much more a UK-wide view of whoever's the best person, people, business to look after your business. There's also people out there who are being told, no, this is it. You've outgrown your market. You need to go somewhere else. And that's not fair. It's not a fair fight. It's not the opportunity to be able to help grow our industry. I run a small business outside of Manchester, a place I'm really proud to have grown up and lived all of my life. We've got loads of other stuff we could be doing, but instead we're really championing our industry, because my fear is it will not be here in 10 years' time.
Yeah. Paul, you were going to say?
I was just going to kind of follow up on both those points. Firstly, I think you made a really good point around, I think post-COVID geography is far less of an issue.
Yep.
I say 50% of our client base are actually based in London. So it's about capabilities in areas of kind of owning an area of capability and innovation or whatever it is, and making that your thing rather than geography your thing. I think that's how the market has changed post-COVID. And I think from a northern perspective, we tend to work, or I can talk about it from my perspective, far more with kind of privately backed, scale-up kind of direct-to-consumer businesses. That's a big area of expertise, and retail and challenger brands. But I do think you're right, Jess, as well, in relation to more businesses going through intermediaries. Why that is not for me to say. But I can't remember the last piece of business. We're growing this year. We've won more than we lost last year. None of that's through intermediaries. That is all through the work that we do directly, prospecting and working with people and building up those networks.
Yeah.
Because, I'll go back to the passionate conversation I had. My point was, if it's about access to talent, the 4 agencies you put on the roster employ less people combined than I've got in an office in Manchester. So that's complete rubbish. It's not about access to talent, it's the fact you don't understand those agencies. So when you're selling yourself, you talk about the agencies you know, because it's human nature. So it's up to us, I think, as an industry, to make sure and we educate those parts of the sector. And it's also up to them, if they want to be representative, to actually get to know the whole of the industry across the UK as well.
I think it also, if you're an agency, then what are you, who are you targeting? Talking about marketing, who are you targeting? What kind of clients are going to best suit your business? So some of our London agencies, so we've got Cara, our media agency that we have, Wyden and Kennedy do a lot of fantastic work for us, the Lurpak campaigns, etc. We work with them from London because they also service globally as well.
Yeah.
So also they have the capabilities, the knowledge, the staff to then understand what we need on a global basis, and then we can execute it in the local markets as well. That is a choice in terms of a capability build. It's a choice in terms of who you're going to target from an agency perspective to build those kind of things. So that will also then drive the kind of clients you get and you don't get, and that's like you said.
And I think we've had this thing around the regions or not the regions. I like the word North in our Essence Mediacom North because it is a differentiating factor. And it's about saying it's the same operation, it's the same business, it's the same culture and the same kind of vision, but there's an area of expertise and specialism that gives it that definition, and the North bit adds to that. So I mean, I like the definition, and I think we should actually scale up or not scale back on it.
Well, and maybe see it as a positive thing.
Yeah,
why should
completely.
it be seen as a negative?
Yeah.
Why don't you see it as a real positive thing? Marketing lesson on Guinness, they takes a long time to pour. They made a real special. How can you take that as a northern agency and be, this is a special thing, it differentiates us, it means we're better, not we're trying to compete and seen as inferior to.
On the language piece, this is interesting where we're going now. Agencies here in the crowd, do you consider yourselves regional agencies? Is that word a good word to use? Lindsay?
So I think this whole conversation started because Nick and Lisa wrote that brilliant article, which sort of lit the touch paper, I think, on this topic. Ban the R word. Let's not be called regional. We happened to be doing an event in Manchester that very week, and I can't tell you the air was alight with people just being, passionately engaged in this topic. And we had people from big network agencies talking about what a problem it was. We had independent agencies, media people. It was definitely acknowledged as an issue. And I think you can't really, unless you acknowledge it's a problem, you have no chance of solving it. Language, I agree, I think is one of the issues, but I think it's a challenge to say, well, ban the R word, because then what do you do instead? Because, how do we articulate the amazing talent that exists outside of London? If you say outside of London, you're already defining it by what it's not, and that, that feels like that's a negative too. So the best that I could come up with on this was, my husband works in the theatre, and they have a term which, when they're talking about diverse casting, they say, have we got global majority people in the cast? And I thought, well, that's a good phrase because it's a positive, embracing term. And how about if we used national majority? And it may not be right, but it's national majority because most of the consumers live outside of London. Most of the agencies are outside of London, as are the talent. So if you start to use more positive language, and then I think the other observation is I've been really reflecting on what we can learn from other areas of DE&I. And I think you have to I think a lot of this is just unconsciousness. People don't even realise that they are discriminating. And so what we need to do is constantly remind them. At every national event, have we got national majority agencies and national majority clients on the speaker list? So, there's so many opportunities. Have we got them represented in, Jess, you were talking about the campaign A list.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 people.
There's 270 people in the A list, of which 2 people are outside of London.
Yeah, and so I don't think they set out to discriminate against national majority people, but it happens. So I think it's a challenge for all of us to spot it where it is, be very, very vocal, and then I think things will improve.
And I think it's about having pride and confidence in the capabilities, to go back to what everyone's saying. So I think the biggest challenge we've got, which I think is eminently solvable, is about telling a good story. It's what we tell clients all the time. It's about brand storytelling, the brand of your agency. And the audience here is, as you say, Paul, the intermediaries, whether we like it or not, but telling that story, repeating it, high frequency, but evidenced by brilliant work. And that brand building work, high impact as brands grow, is absolutely at the heart of it. So I think that's how we can do that. I do think there's an opportunity for networks to think where they maybe could invest more in certain sectors. But I think there's another thing, which is what we as ITV can do. So we are looking at a number of initiatives with intermediaries and journalists to bring them up here, to get them to things like our showcase event, and to find ways in which we can work with all of the agencies as a collective voice for the national majority.
Yeah. 20 years ago, maybe still today, the North was known as the digital centre of excellence, in the UK. Does the North need to own something again, or is that a hark back to the past that we don't need to go near?
I think we were built by entrepreneurs who created brilliant businesses that became really well known for direct response and digital. I think we cannot hark back to the past. It has to be digital, and everything is digital now.
Yeah.
So we have to be known for more than just parochial, local. We'll get you some good prices. We'll give you a bit of good digital on the side, and then everything else you have to find elsewhere. So I think it's a positive foundation that we've been built on. We cannot just rely on that. We have to be more than that, and we have to be better thinkers. We have to be more creative, and we have to bring that swagger back to what we can bring to our clients' business.
Yeah.
I'd also add as well, listening to many of the sessions over the last couple of days, what really struck me, and I'm going to use this as an example from Essence Mediacom, is the work in AI that's been done, that started in Manchester, that's now driving the whole group globally. And I appreciate that's in the digital space, but some of the best ideas start here. This is a place where invention has happened. It will continue to. Creativity, innovation starts here. We've just got to all say it more frequently with more examples. Yeah,
and we have to lean into our industry more as well. We have to build a brand for our agencies, for our companies, and we have to start to play the game. We can't have that northern chip on our shoulder saying no one's listening to us, so I'm just not going to involve myself. We've got to get involved. We've got to start to think about how we PR ourselves better, get more awards in those campaign or whatever it is that we need to do, and start to get our swagger back.
I'm going to have to, now you've mentioned awards, we did have 10 nominations at the Campaign Media Awards this morning.
Good,
so I'll just have
good
to
for you, Paul.
You are in selling mode there, I like
No, I think you're right on creativity, and I don't think harking back to digital and data is the past, it's the future as well as the past and the present. And I think picking up on what Jason said in relation to the work we're doing around AI and the impact that's going to have on creativity. AI isn't just about kind of doing things that humans don't want to do. It's about, I liken it to probably the invention of the computer. It's going to be that ubiquitous, used across absolutely everything. It's not a new internet, it's not a new something else. It's like having a whole new computer all over again. And I think actually when you look at this festival and you look at everybody here, I think it's about owning. And I've said this before, you've made a really, really good point. If you've owned something rather than compete with essentially what is probably the best and biggest creative services industry in the world 200 miles away, don't compete against it, be additive. Yeah. Be additive and actually work off it and kind of bounce off it. So I'm not a believer in a kind of the seesaw kind of zero-sum game. It's about being additive, and it's about how we do that. I think that's what grows the region.
Ladies and gents, we are out of time, but thank you very, very much to our panel, and hopefully you enjoyed that.
Thank you.